Hello and thank you for joining us for Northwest Newsweek. I'm Riley McManus. Classes for both PSW and nursing at the Seven Generations Education Institute in Fort Frances have been at maximum capacity, leaving would-be students waiting another year before they can begin their education. However, help is on the way, following an announcement of $13 million by the province this past week. Adam Riley has the details.
But my passion was to work in Indigenous communities in the far north. And so I moved to Sioux Lookout. I had my diploma in nursing, and off I went.
At just 21 years of age, Greg Rickford was focused on bringing the best health care he could as a nurse to residents in the far north. Flash forward to today, Rickford is doing the same thing now in his capacity as the MPP for Kenora-Rainy River and as Ontario's Minister of Indigenous Affairs, specifically through Indigenous-led education, which is why on Wednesday he announced $12.9 million in funding, which will go towards expanding the Seven Generations Education Institute's capacity to teach in the fields of nursing and personal support work, with $2 million dedicated to this year and growing to over $5 million by year 3. CEO Brent Toucanay says this money could lead to hundreds of new graduates entering the field.
We have 3 campuses, Sioux Lookout, Fort Frances, and Kenora, and there'll be 12 at each of those programs, so another 36 total each year in say nursing and then PSW as well. So, we're looking at a significant number of people, hopefully if everybody is successful in the programming.
Toucanay adds this funding will also remove a massive barrier for students seeking higher education, and that is the financial component. Rickford says one of the benefits of having Seven Generations and other Indigenous education institutes involved in this training surge is the language component, something he had to learn while performing his duties as a nurse.
The ability to have Indigenous and non-Indigenous students trained at least in the basics, and some of them as their first language, will only enhance the quality of the health care that Indigenous people receive here.
As the funding is not dedicated to physical expansion of the classrooms themselves, Seven Generations will be increasing the number of available classes and hiring the appropriate staff. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The football field behind the former Pinewood School in Dryden is looking a little different these days as a new 40-unit seniors housing complex begins to take shape. The project, with an attached price tag of $20 million, has had its foundation laid and contractors are continuing the build despite the extended winter weather. On Thursday, the big project received a boost from the province through Ontario Services Relief Fund in the amount of $1.6 million. Kenora-Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford says the complex will level the playing field for seniors looking for housing that suits both their needs and lifestyles.
This is long overdue. We had more than a decade and a half where this was completely neglected, and our government is committed to making sure that seniors have affordable, accessible housing in their communities.
This is as much about creating housing, it is about improving quality of life for our seniors. What is also unique about this housing program is that it has space for community providers, service providers to come on site to allow seniors to age in place, to have longer in our communities.
Wall says the project will include some green space as it backs onto Pinewood School, the site of a program geared towards Indigenous single mothers, and he's hopeful to see a community within a community emerge. The province is lending a financial hand for a major shakeup in the forestry sector in Kenora, which will see one of the city's sawmill find a new home in the community. Green First Forest Products, which owns the former Kenora Forest Product Mill, is receiving over $17 million from Ontario in the form of a performance-based loan to relocate, improve, and expand the sawmill. The move will allow the facility to change its layout and bring its operations into the 21st century, creating up to 85 new jobs and further potential 135 indirect jobs. A company spokesperson says the land the mill currently sits on is worth more as a well-planned development and not as a sawmill. There's no timeline for the relocation nor for the repayment of the loan. A critical milestone has been reached for building roads and developing the Ring of Fire. Premier Doug Ford recently joined leaders from Martin Falls and Webequie First Nations for an announcement on the Northern Road Link. The two communities will be submitting the terms of reference to guide the work done in the environmental assessment for the proposed access roads. Cord Nordstrom has the details.
The Northern Link roadway will be a vital transportation connection to the First Nation communities in the north, connecting them to the jobs and opportunities of tomorrow.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford was on hand for the day's announcement, which his government is calling a historic moment for the Ring of Fire. Martin Falls and Webquay First Nations are filing a Terms of Reference for the environmental assessment on the Northern Road Link. That project would open up the Ring of Fire mineral deposits to development by linking a pair of roads previously planned by each First Nation, the Webquay Supply Road to the Ring of Fire and the Martin Falls Access Road to the provincial highway network.
Start of a journey for us into economic reconciliation for Martin Falls First Nation and our neighboring Matwa First Nation communities.
The proposed terms of reference will help generate the information for the communities to make an informed decision on what needs to be done in the environmental assessment process.
We also will use our homelands for hunting, trapping, and harvesting to supplement our diet with protein from the land such as caribou, moose, geese, and berries. So we are very careful in our environmental stewardship responsibilities.
Road construction is still a ways away. After further feedback, the First Nations will await a decision from the Minister of the Environment. The government is looking to invest in minerals for electric vehicle production, touting this as a win for the communities and the economy.
For energy corridors, for a roadway that will help move community members back and forth to city centres, for other things like health services and economic activity.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
The Nuclear Waste Management Organization has released a 5-year implementation plan regarding their proposed multi-billion-dollar nuclear waste repository. The agency has just 2 potential locations to house the underground facility, including one near Ignace. Vasilios Bellos reports.
The chosen location would have a repository that can store nearly 5.5 million spent nuclear fuel bundles from across Canada. The massive project has been in the works for nearly 2 decades, with a preferred location planned to be decided late in 2023. With Ignace being a possible site, it has sparked lengthy discussions surrounding the safety of transporting and storing these highly radioactive bundles. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization's new implementation plan addresses this, with Vice President Lise Morton saying the standards are significant.
We need to be able to demonstrate to a regulator, in this case to the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, that the site has a strong safety case. So in other words, we're going to have to be able to demonstrate various parameters of both the geology, the geoscience, to be able to demonstrate that that rock can safely contain the fuel.
Another portion of the NWMO's implementation plan talked about the importance of consultation. This has been a massive talking point for the Ignace site, as the project would affect the township as well as the nearby Wabigoon Lake First Nation. Morton went on to say that the final decision is ultimately the community's.
We're confident that we're engaging with the community, that we're trying to answer their questions, and we certainly welcome all of the diversity of views on the project and try to provide the information and answer people's questions so that the community members can make their own decision as to whether the project is a good fit for the community.
The project has sparked interest and opposition not only from Ignace and Wabigoon Lake First Nation, but other communities including Dryden and Thunder Bay, as the transportation of nuclear fuel bundles would happen across northwestern Ontario.
We're also going to be assessing transportation in the area and whether we can develop a safe and socially acceptable transportation plan to both of the locations.
Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
When we come back, a company that looks to revolutionize the agriculture sector in the Northwest gives residents a peek at its operations before it seals the door to create its contained environment. After months of hard work and development, the public was given a look inside the Argotech North facility in Dryden this past week, before the futuristic farm seals its doors to begin its operation. The company's goal is to shake up the agriculture sector in Dryden, as well as create food security in the region through locally grown fruits and vegetables, all year round. Adam Riley reports.
For a good 5 months of the year, northwestern Ontario is a barren, snow-covered landmass inhospitable to plants that bear both fruits and vegetables, which makes year-round farming near impossible. But within a few short weeks, Benjamin Fagan and Fabian Velez expect to be planting their first crops at their new facility in Dryden. On Monday, residents were able to get a look at how Agritech North intends to grow its crops. Fagan says he was happy to see the turnout, as after that, the facility will not be open to the public.
There were about 200 people here today. We were constantly doing multiple rounds of overlapping tours between Fabian and myself. And so it was a much more turnout than we expected. So super exciting, and we're really happy to see that much interest.
After the open house, Fagan says the futuristic farm will become a contained environment with rigorous protocols and requirements to enter. Part of keeping strong crop yields involves automation, which is where Kenobi Technologies comes in. CEO Robin Vincent says his systems monitor the farm as a whole through sensors attached to nutrient systems and environmental controls.
And then we apply that sensor data to the automation. So then the automation carries out activities, turning the AC on, turning the dehumidifiers on, but also the dosing. So it's responsible for making sure that the plants have whatever environment that they need.
Velez serves as Agritech North's master grower and explains how some of the produce will grow and be harvested after planting and nurturing in their vertical growing system.
We're going to let it sit for as long as we can for the roots to actually get nice and settled. We're going to have a system in place for the plants to actually grow hold of something, its vines to actually start growing. And then we just pick off the tomato plants, just like you would a regular plant. When it comes to the herbs, like rosemary, thyme, sage, we're just going to cut off what we need and just let it keep growing.
Later that week, area MPP Greg Rickford, who also serves as the chair of the NOHFC, which helped fund Agritech North to the tune of $200,000, was able to tour the facility. He says the farming methods employed by Agritech are not the norm for the region, but he sees big things for the future.
Agritech and our support for them is focused squarely on providing certainty around food supply, food security, and working in full partnership with the Indigenous communities up north. That makes perfect sense given our vast region, and we think that this is just the beginning.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
Ontario Provincial Police say no charges will be laid against the driver of a transport truck that was involved in a dramatic crash near Kenora last weekend. The single vehicle collision occurred at around 7 o'clock on the morning of April 17th on the Highway 17A bypass. Kenora OPP say the driver of the transport lost control and the vehicle flipped over into a ditch. Emergency crews on scene had to take precautions as diesel fuel was leaking from the tractor trailer. The driver was sent to hospital but only suffered minor injuries. OPP say no charges were warranted as melting snow and slippery road conditions appeared to be the main cause of the mishap. A major search effort continues south of Wawa after a small plane with 2 men on board mysteriously disappeared from the radar signals on April 14th. The flight was bound for Marathon after departing from southern Ontario. The search for the aircraft is being led by the Royal Canadian Air Force, but poor weather hindered their efforts this week. Family members say the pilot is Brian Slingerland and his passenger is John Fair. The plane is believed to have gone down somewhere between Sault Ste. Marie and Wawa. Numerous military aircraft, along with a Coast Guard helicopter, have been doing visual searches and using devices that can pick up and hone emergency locator signals. CFB Trenton spokesperson Major Trevor Reed says every moment counts, as the search is still a rescue mission.
We take things literally minute by minute, hour by hour. As part of our search efforts, we have a very methodical process that we follow per the Canadian Search and Rescue Manual. And we obviously don't look too far forward ahead. We really operate in the here and the now, and that's certainly what we are doing.
Family members say the plane was recently purchased and was being transported from Ontario to Alberta. A state of emergency has been declared on the KI First Nation as a COVID outbreak has overwhelmed local resources. The community is asking for nursing staff and other help to keep critical infrastructure up and running. There are now more than 60 active COVID cases in the community, where just over 1,100 people are living on reserve. Chief Donnie Morris is asking for government assistance and funding, particularly for the nursing station. This outbreak is part of a wave that Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority public health physician Dr. Lloyd Douglas calls a tsunami, with their 33 communities seeing much higher COVID rates than at any other point in the pandemic, and over 500 active cases. SLIFNA President James Morris says he's particularly worried about communities that have low vaccination rates.
There's a lot of pressure for governments to open up in the minute things start to look a little bit better. I can't say I'm not a businessman. I can't say anything about that. That's government's business, and if they choose to do that. But in our case, we're going to keep our masks on for a while longer.
When we look at the vaccination status of community members with COVID-19 needing hospital care, 95% of individuals who ended up in hospital did not receive 3 doses.
SLIFNA officials are strongly encouraging their communities to keep their vaccines up to date or to start the vaccination process if they haven't yet started. Coming up after the break, students return to Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School before the school year ends. It's been an exciting week for staff and students at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School as the school returned to an in-person learning format for the first time since before Christmas. With the end of the school year right around the corner, it gives the GFC students the chance to reconnect with friends after a difficult 4 months. Vasilios Bellos has the story.
There was definitely a feeling of excitement and relief around Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, with students back in the classrooms for the first time since December. Being able to socialize with friends, ask a question face-to-face with their teacher, or participate in sports and activities once again no doubt had an impact on students. DFC Principal Sharon Anshikaneb says bringing the kids back for the final month of the high school year will be hugely beneficial for them.
Not just for the academics, but also for mental health, being able to build those relationships in person, that's important. Online, unfortunately, it hasn't worked. For many of our students.
Most students at DFC, around 100 at this point, have returned to the classroom this first week back, and those numbers are expected to gradually rise as they get closer to the end of the school year.
Some are still trickling in. Some communities were in lockdown, so as soon as they are able to travel out, they'll be joining us. Then we have another 20, more or less, that have opted to do online.
While all students are excited to be back, it may be those graduating this year that are most thankful for the experience. Derek Moniez is in his final year at DFC and says while it doesn't make up for the past 2 years, he's happy he can wrap up his time at the school with his friends.
It's really good. The 1 month here, it's better than having no time at all with them, rather just only looking at them from a screen. It encourages me, like, I'd rather be surrounded by loud classmates rather than distractions like my TV or Xbox at home, my phone. I'd rather be here, and that really helps me.
26 students are expected to graduate here this year at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, an even more exciting and impressive feat considering the difficulty of the past 2 years. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
The quest for funding has started on the next major project for Red Rock, a 109-lot RV park and campground. For several years, the town had been attempting to study the feasibility of such an endeavor. And now, with the data in hand, the park is expected to become an economic driver for the community. Adam Riley has the details.
If we looked at the population of Ontario alone, the market is underserved by roughly 500 campgrounds or 10,000 campsites.
With those numbers in mind, Council in Red Rock is setting its sights on building 90 fully serviced RV lots and a further 19 sites for tents and ultralight campers. The location for the park would be adjacent to the town's waterfront in an area that is currently used for winter boat and trailer storage, as well as some undeveloped land. Those numbers came from Eric McSweeney, CEO of McSweeney & Associates, an economic development consultation firm. He says the demand for both serviced and unserviced campsites has grown and doesn't seem to be slowing down.
It has picked up steam quite substantially with COVID because it's seen as a family-safe activity to do. And once people have made the investment, they don't tend to jettison it very quickly.
However, he notes while the supply is low and demand is high, meaning there would be a steady source of income, there is a significant startup capital cost of $5 million. And he says the campground would only be financially viable with full funding from higher levels of government.
The funding hunt starts tonight.
Red Rock Mayor Darkise Robinson says with the provincial election right around the corner, she's confident Red Rock can be successful in that hunt, given the right pitch coupled with McSweeney's report, which includes the potential revenue and the economic spin-off the park could make.
There's a need for camping sites. And our marina is absolutely beautiful. We have easy access to water, hiking trails, everything that you need. If we could potentially bring in, $500,000 to $1 million a year, that's unheard of for Red Rock. So obviously the benefit to the whole community is just tenfold.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
The battle for the Bill Salonen Cup is on, with the Red Lake Miners looking to fry up the Cam River Fighting Walleye in their first ever appearance in the SIJHL Finals. The league's two top teams faced off for Game 1 Thursday night. Corey Nordstrom has the highlights.
The whole season has led to this, Game 1 of the SIJHL Final. Oliver Papunj is the site as the top-seeded Cam River Fighting Walleye square off with the number 2 Red Lake Miners. It took more than 15 minutes to break the deadlock, but it was no surprise who. A Kersey Reich wrister gets blockered up. Dayton Clark corrals the rebound to get the orange and black on the board. The man who scored the last Walleye goal to book their spot in the final puts Cam River up 1. Jumping to the second, things would get a lot chippier. After Cam River's Max McNeil takes a roughing penalty, Ryan Howe goes cross ice to Brandon Rossetti for the one-timer. Jordan Baraneski pots the rebound to knot this affair at ones, and he takes sole possession of first on the playoff scoring race. Then, with under 5 minutes left in the period, the Walleye's Reich gets caught tripping, the Miners set up in the offensive zone, and with 3 minutes left in the period, Brady Haroon snaps one high glove. Red Lake ends the second up 2-1. The third period would further prove that you cannot take penalties against these Red Lake Miners. 2 minutes into the final frame, Ethan Lang gets called for hooking. Not even 30 seconds into the man advantage, Ryan Hunter walks across the blue line and beats Austin Madge with a laser beam. Cam Rivers' Dayton Clark would get one back, but Red Lake takes game 1 of the Bill Salonen Cup. Fighting Walleye head coach Matt Valley not pleased with his team's efforts on the penalty kill.
Like they scored 3 of their 4 chances on the power play, right? So pretty simple adjustment for us there, I think. Like, we tried to make them in between periods, and they just kept hitting those seams that we were trying not to leave open. Obviously, I had some key guys out of the lineup, but like, I don't think that's any excuse. We have a lot of good penalty killers in the lineup tonight that just didn't do their job, I don't think.
Game 2 is on Friday. Corey Nordstrom, TBT Sports.
And that wraps up Northwest Newsweek. Thank you so much for joining us.